When you look at Victor Saniev's off-season training, you look at Vasily Alexiev, the great super heavyweight lifter, Yuri Sadiq told me this too, is that most of these athletes in the off-season either played volleyball extremely seriously or soccer extremely seriously. Volleyball is what the explosive sports did in the Soviet Union, to the point that a lot of the guys would push off their hammer throwing or their jumping for a while because they were in a tournament, and that tournament was more important than their off-season triple jump.
That was Dan John, and you're listening to the Just Fly Performance Podcast. Today's podcast is brought to you by our longtime sponsor, SimplyFaster.com. There's 2 items I'd like to talk to you about today that you can find in Simply Faster's online store. Whether you're a coach or an athlete, these are both things that you'll find highly useful as tools in your training toolbox. The first is blood flow restriction training methods. And after hearing about blood flow restriction training for years now, as well as the results that athletes are getting with it, especially in, for example, lactate sports like swimming, 100-meter freestyle, and not only hearing of that, but also seeing how much some swimmers had liked that type of training method, I knew I had to start trying it out myself. So I've been utilizing the air bands. I really enjoy it, both the feeling while I'm actually training with them, as well as seeing the visual result of spending time training with the methods and then the strength result. They've been a really cool training tool, and I would definitely recommend checking into air bands. SimplyFaster.com also has Be Strong brand blood flow restriction. The second item is the VMAX Pro, and this is a new option for velocity-based training, barbell tracking. It provides valuable load-based data, including speed in all phases of a lift, and it delivers key metrics such as power, velocity, distance, as well as duration of effort. The VMAX Pro system measures any lift you can think of. It's portable, durable, and intuitive. You can check out these 2 items and much more at our sponsor, SimplyFaster.com's online store. Let's get on to the show. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. Thanks for being here. On the podcast today, I'm happy to welcome back Coach Dan John. He's a strength coach, a track coach, and a writer. Dan is a legendary contributor to the world of human performance. He's written numerous top-selling books in the world of strength development, such as Easy Strength, as well as having coached and taught athletes for decades. Dan has been a multi-time guest on this podcast and is one of the greatest influences on the way that I see the process of sports development. On the show today, Dan will be speaking on whole part whole teaching of sports and athletic skills, and how if we get too far down into the parts, into all these little drills and nuances, but we don't bring it back or really circulate our instruction around the whole, we will create this gap between training or instruction and when an athlete is actually competing and actually displaying their skills. Dan will also be going into his motor learning and instructional library and coaching, and specifically speaking on elements of using velocity or even increasing complexity of the movement, challenging the rhythm of the movement, and infusing relaxation to help athletes better adapt their technical abilities, and also just to be better and more robust problem solvers as they learn to optimize their own skills over time. Dan will be speaking on games, and games that aren't specific to one sport. So if I'm in track, like I'm playing basketball or volleyball, or if I'm in a team sport situation, using either another sport or just fun games to warm up, to help my conditioning level. Dan will also be giving some practical wisdom of where to get started with sets and reps, and he'll be sharing his thoughts on ideas of training phases and periodization. It's always an honor to have Dan on the show, and I really enjoy listening to his coaching wisdom from his decades in the craft of human performance. Let's get to episode 307. Dan, so you've said this, and I this is really interesting because it's something I've been thinking about, is like this almost like Rafe Kelly when he was on was talking, this term atomization of these athletic qualities, and it's just kind of stuck with me. And you were talking about like hurdling and wrestling preparing you for football better than, all right, we're going to get in the weight room and we're doing this periodization and this kind of rate of force development and this kind of power training and all this.
And I've heard that nonsense. Yeah.
I mean, that almost kind of sums it up, right? In the sense of, like, we've talked about being simple, like how do we simplify things and how do we simplify things? And I guess what my question is at what point are we dissecting like the lifts too far, or like a jump or an outputs, or at what point are we starting to dissect?
Yes.
Do you feel that we are dissecting the whole more than it should be?
It's a lost style of teaching. This is not me trying to be cute, but I've got the original J.K. Doherty's track and field omni book right here. Okay.
Oh, nice.
And this is probably my 5th or 6th edition I've bought, and I had to, because it keeps falling apart. And the thing I got from him, even as a young athlete, was when I was young, we were taught the method of whole part, whole part, whole part, whole. And I don't see that anymore. I teach kettlebells and I teach Olympic lifting, no inserts and stuff. And I'll be with other instructors, and it's like part, 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 part. And I can keep saying part for another half an hour, but I'll stop there. And then finally they say, okay, now everybody swing. Well, why your swing so bad? Well, because you showed them a million things not to do. You showed them all these corrections and regressions, but you didn't show them the swing or the exercise. So it's got to be, we have to live. I think I used the word accordion a little bit too much, but you have to almost live like an accordion as a coach, whole part. And so when you pull the accordion apart, you got more space to add things, but then when it comes time, you got to push it together. So I think the mistake is many coaches have forgotten the whole. And by the way, that's where the fun is too. There's nothing more fun than 11 on 11 football, American football. And when you play games, there's so much more fun. Even at the most elite levels of soccer, football, the game is still fun to the guys. And, when the NBA guys, it's still baseball. It's still fun. They like to play the games. In baseball, they say that's all eyewash, and they go like this. That means just more crap they're giving us to do. But in truth, they like to go out and hit the ball and throw it around and laugh. And so the whole is the sport itself. Now, you let someone do it, and if they're brand new to it, you cross your arms and you kind of go, and you just wait, and then you fix something, and then you do the whole again, and then you show a drill, and then you do the whole again. And for me, that's what real coaching's about. When you play multiple sports in the off season, the sport teaches you those little things. The thing, I was a terrible basketball player and not a very good soccer player, but those two sports taught me triangles. They taught me spacing. And it really helped me as a strong safety, because I could see, I could just mentally go, okay, I got this. I need, the triangling helps you move things around. If I'd have been just at a football camp all the time, I might have been taught triangulation, where the ball is, but it wouldn't have been so in real time fast. You got to know this stuff. And I think that's what gets lost when we overdo things in the deep off season. And it's weird because, I'm no fan of the Soviet method. In fact, I think most of it's pure nonsense, to be honest with you, and out lies in many cases. But when you look at Viktor Saniev's off-season training, you look at Vasily Alexiev, the great super heavyweight lifter, Yuri Sadiq told me this too, is that most of these athletes in the off-season either played volleyball extremely seriously or soccer extremely seriously. Volleyball is what the explosive sports did in the Soviet Union, to the point that a lot of the guys would push off their hammer throwing or their jumping for a while because they were in a tournament, and that tournament was more important than their off-season triple jumping.
That's awesome.
And if you do cross country in the fall, soccer, as appropriate, summer or winter, depending on where you live, and then long distance in track season, I think you'll be a better runner than if you go cross country, indoor track and field, because there's going to be a time in a soccer basketball match where you have to go as fast as you physically can, tired, because the game might depend on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other 10 players expect you to do that. Whereas at a track meet, you can maybe ease off because you just don't, So there's gifts that you get from all this other stuff. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. It also, the thing that's been resonating in my mind a lot is that the sum of the parts in those situations, in hurdling and wrestling and playing volleyball, is greater than the sum. The whole is greater than the little sum of the parts. Like if you added all the sum of the parts together, you can't get that thing that you get when you're doing the big thing. I
remember when synergy was first explained to me at the Olympic Training Center in 1984, and the person just said, it's 1 + 1 = 3. And it was like one of those moments where you're like, huh. And then, that was 1984. I don't know. This is a couple of months later, right? This is just a few
Yeah,
a
just
few
a little
miles
bit.
down the road since then. Well, has that been 40 years?
Yeah,
Oh
I was born in 83. Yeah. So that's a long time ago for me.
So when you were 1,
Yeah, I was 1 then.
and 1 + 1 = 3, and that completely changed my approaches to training and my approaches to training for myself. But the idea is this, is that, so 1 + 1 = 3 would be like, if I sleep every night for 9 hours, I either meditate or get a nap in every day. I eat protein veggies at every meal and drink water. And I never miss in the weight room. I do all the fundamental human movements. And I don't have any huge errors in the discus technique. I'll throw farther than if I throw 12 hours a day. So all those little tiny ones add up more to just sports specialization with my event. And it's so obvious when you say it, especially when you include sleep and food. But then I work with these high school kids who their coaches expect them to be in the weight room ready to go at 6:30, 5 days a week. Well, high school boys don't sleep well at night. Do you have children, Joel?
Yeah, they're 3 and 5.
Well, you're not there yet. But when you talk to your teenage athletes, one of the hardest things for many of them to do is fall asleep at night. It's like the monkey brain just kicks on at about, 9, 10 o'clock. And of course, now with cell phones and the internet and all that, it's even worse. I've had athletes tell me, oh yeah, I get calls at 3 a.m. and or texts, I answer them. Okay, you can't be an elite athlete and wake up 50 times a night and text back. That your brain is never going to get where it needs to be, for those deeper sleeps to really rejuvenate the body. So yes, synergy, 1 + 1 = 3 is the key to all my coaching. And that's why I'm such a big fan. At every school I've taught it, now I haven't been able to do it at the collegiate level because we don't have the numbers, but Friday has always been either flag football day or later. Do you know what those big Swiss balls are? Those big Swiss balls?
Like I know the normal size is like 30 inches. Are you talking like one?
Yeah, the normal size.
Okay, got it.
And people do I think they're a waste of time and energy, but here's what you use it for. We play 2 games. One is no goalie soccer with those balls.
Oh yeah.
Well, when you kick those balls, if you kick them right, they make these massive. They're like wiffle balls.
Oh yeah, like you get that. What's that effect when you throw it off the? I'm trying to think of it. Yeah, I know what you're saying though.
Yeah, and in the other game we play with it is not ultimate frisbee, but ultimate Swiss ball. And so the athletes run and they punch it and they kick it and they throw it and ball hits the ground, goes over. I will have athletes who never sprint their hearts out because of this stupid ultimate game that they're playing. And so for me, I throw that into my training as a normal part of our training, even deep into the season. Now, before the conference, you're probably not going to do it. And, probably, but, 2 to 3 weeks out of the biggest meet, you'd walk away from that stuff because you don't want to, and it's because of injuries and it's because of an ankle injury. And it's hard to explain that one, but why condition when I can throw that silly little ball out on the field and people lose their mind kicking it, and punching it and running with it. And the thing is, they get the conditioning, they get the sprinting in, but they don't even know they're doing it. And it's funny because even if I explain to them, we're doing this for your conditioning, the second that ball hits them, gets close to them and they punch it, kick it or whatever, the brain forgot about its conditioning. Now they're just trying to chase the ball down so they can win the honor of being the champion of the Swiss ball game, So that's how I like to condition. Yeah.
I love that. It reminds me a little bit about when Joel Reinhardt and Andrew Cormier were on. Joel was saying that the ultimate conditioning is if you can do it all in games, small-sided games, and get those, grab those metrics and not have to go and run a bunch of sprints out. If I can do it all with games, that's it.
Well, it's interesting because actually up in Canada, they play indoor lacrosse called box lacrosse. And Canadian lacrosse players are very famous for being so good with their stick work. And the reason they're so good is an indoor game, you get the ball so many more times and it's so much faster because the ball stays live off the walls.
Oh, yeah. Interesting.
And the Brazilians have an indoor soccer game. I don't remember the name of it. It might be foosball or something like that. I don't know. Where they kick the ball. It's a different size ball. And that's where the Brazilians really learn how to utilize the ball. But the conditioning is, you'll get in condition, but you'll also improve those weird techniques that, I can give 1,000 athletes, we'll just use lacrosse, their stick, and we're going to stand next to a wall, and I'm going to throw the ball at the wall and catch it. Throw the ball at the wall and catch it. And that's great. And that is nothing like when I'm punching you in the face trying to get the ball from you. So playing always makes you speed up your skill set. Epstein, in his book, he shows us that the youngest child is often the best athlete because they're sprinting to catch up their whole life.
Yeah.
I grew up playing against Division I athletes in street football and street basketball games. I was 9 years old playing against collegiate athletes. Well, I sucked, but I was sucking against some pretty good athletes. And you had to learn quickly to adjust and accommodate. Yeah. So, okay. I just feel like I'm.
No, that's good. It reminds me what you were saying. It reminds me of Rolf Omen, who was just on, was talking about, like, basically there's some study or some research that had indicated that between the ages of 13 and 15 or somewhere in there, like your limbs velocity just was set. Like beyond that point, it couldn't, however fast I could move my arm or whatever it was, I couldn't get any faster. And I just think it's funny how, yeah, and especially with the sum of the parts, like playing these games, being forced into, or like competing against higher level people, you just have to play faster. You have to be faster. We can talk all we want about all the training to do down the line, but at some point it's like, all right, if before 13 you weren't like getting those reps in and being pushed on some level with like to play against bigger, faster, stronger kids or something, like there's only so much that you can make up for beyond some point. I don't think we look at that age window enough, and just to be getting those fast, explosive, high coordination reps in, it's so valuable at that age.
One of my best friends is a very famous baseball coach, and he talks about these parents will come up and say, little Joel, he's in ninth grade and throws an 83-mile-an-hour fastball. What do you think about that? He says, at best, he'll improve 3 miles an hour, which is a changeup pitch in the AAA league that the Salt Lake Bees are in. If he throws 3 miles an hour faster, he has the velocity of a slow ball at the higher levels. And he doesn't do it to break their hearts, but it's like saying, my little boy Jimmy is 6'2". Do you think he can make it in the NBA? As what? Well, as a center? No, he can't. What is that weird statistic? If you're in the United States and you're over 7 feet tall, there's a 17% chance you played in the NBA alone.
Yeah, I've heard something like that.
Yeah, it's just like this weird statistic. Yeah, which is that's unusually high, by the way, for those listening. To have one factor, like, for example, the chances of being in the National Football League with blue eyes here across America is probably pretty low. When a child's born, their eyes, when they're about 1 and their eyes are blue, it doesn't mean, he'll play in the NFL because he has blue eyes. But if they're 7 foot, 17% or whatever the number is. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you were talking about some of the parts too, like I love 1 + 1 = 3. Like it's just, I should have it on my wall somewhere, in the sense, like I've been thinking about it a lot, and something that it's almost been a conundrum for a while. And by the way, I love the Victor Saniev, like, one of the best longevity triple jumpers of all time, and playing, and I'll get to the 1 + 1 = 3, but like there's been more than one coaches on this show who will say they have like kind of a trademark game they play as a warm up for the weights or whatever they're doing. And they almost always say that these players seem to like that game more than their actual sport. Like they don't want to stop playing it. And it just makes me think about just playing for the sake of playing, like doing things that are the maximal amount of fun without necessarily any pressure or anything like that. It's just like we all get to be kids again. We're just having fun. And I do see it, like young kids too. And I see it in my own kids, like, if they were just like, I don't know, running down the street or something, they'd probably give up. They say, I'm tired, I don't want to run anymore. But if they're chasing a ball, they're going to keep going. And then they're going to be like super tired at the end, because it's just something about that. Right. And anyway, sorry, I've been trying to, for the longest time, think about, okay, everyone says basketball is the best warm up to jump higher. Like I could do all the marching and whatever, and the lunge matrices and the, sprint prep and the jump prep and the plyos and whatever warm up you want, or even just go out and practice a bunch of jumps. And it will not warm me up as well as basketball. And I keep thinking, like, here's all the little components of basketball that I could maybe take apart and try to make a warm up out of. And maybe it'll get me to jump as high. Nope. It has to be that sum. And I feel like the biggest like ingredient, like the The king ingredient there is it's with friends or competition. That's the one that you really, that's like the king ingredient right there, the queen ingredient. And it's like that reaction, that competition just takes everything else you're doing and it just really ups that whole thing to this point that I don't think you can recreate it. And so I'm always just thinking about that, like these some of the part experiences that are really organic too. Like these are part of nature. This is what we're just meant to do. And we're not necessarily meant to play one sport. And then when we're not doing it, just try to like dissect all the little pieces here and there so much. I mean, we can, but I just think
I was LJ Sylvester's at a workshop, and the question came up about off-season conditioning. And I remember, if you actually listened to him and didn't, he said, why don't just maybe lift weights 2 to 3 times a week and then play basketball. Getting yourself in a league and play basketball. He goes, that's all you'll ever need. And I'm like, I'd like to disagree with you, but we're both Aggies, so we have to. Oh, one funny thing I was going to show you. So that's those are my handwritten notes on Victor Saniev's program. Can you see it?
Nice. Yeah, I can. I feel like I should take a screenshot right now. That's awesome.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. Here's my little, there we go. All right, done.
Yeah, and then inside. So this is my little red book, and I've been keeping notes in here since 1974. When I hear something that just staggers me and changes the way I look at everything, I always put it in here. Problem is, I'm out of paper and the cover fell off. I had notes on the cover. I can't find it. Boy, there's some great stuff in here. Huh. Yeah. So it was funny when I mentioned Saniev and you knew, made me kind of happy. Yeah. So I think we're coming to an important point here. I mean, so are the drills that you teach important? Yes. When they're important. The drills that I teach as a throws coach are important when I teach them. But you have to make sure you have a system. Yeah, you got to make sure the athlete's in condition. By the way, I am stunned, I tell you. Shocked there's gambling in Casablanca. How poorly conditioned the athletes come to me now. I just was at my elementary school's 51st year reunion. My elementary school, we have reunions of great people. And that was something we talked a lot about, because you can see we have pictures of ourselves in the 8th grade. And, I graduated from high school 162 pounds. And I think you could have, if I'd have flexed my abs, I could have held about 400 pens there. I was just ripped to shreds at 162, but I threw the discus 170. I don't know if that means much to you, but
no, yeah, no, I threw discus a little bit, not only 120. I just hopped in a couple of meets and chucked it, but I would have loved to train for it more. Yeah, it's a long way.
And yet nowadays I work with kids who weigh. It's weird. When I remember the first time I saw a 300-pound high school football player, he played for Westmore High School. He was 300 pounds. That's more the average in Utah football now. That's kind of where most teams will have a couple of 300-pounders. And it's not, these are not Mr. Universe 300-pounders. And so one of the issues that we have now is kids show up now and we condition them, but they need interventions, not conditioning. I mean it. If you're, I'll deal with kids who are 260 who have the strength levels of what used to be 150 pounder, and they carry a lot of extra weight. Their ankles are in bad shape. Their knees hurt. They're getting feet issues because of the pounding, and they don't play at all. They don't play. I had an athlete years ago, and it stunned me. We had that Friday. It was when we're doing the Friday Flag Football League, and I made this rule that everybody had to rotate at quarterbacks because we had kids who were really, really good. And he goes, "Coach, I don't know how to throw a football." I go, "What? You play football?" He goes, "Yeah, but I'm a lineman." The kid had never thrown a football because he was a lineman. The only time he had ever played the game of football was when he had a helmet on in a league. So he played for 8 or 9 years and never once played football. It's stunning to me.
Yeah.
There's no pickup games anymore. You don't see kids at a park with baseballs, and there's always these damn adults who think they know better. Get out of it. Stop. Parents, stop reliving your youth through your children. It's their turn. Let them go. Let them play. Quit having so many rules.
Yeah. It is interesting. Like with that, even how far have we departed from just playing flag football, during recess or something, right? And where everyone, different people get to be the quarterback now and then. I mean, I was never good at the quarterback, but I got to be it every now and then. And, and everyone gets a turn. And, even in coaching youth sport, it's interesting because even at the youngest level, I'm always trying to find ways where their kids can organically start to just do it on their own. Where I'm like, the more I have to intervene at that age, it actually kind of can almost ruin it, on some level. I mean, they need structure and they need the basic guidelines, but like, if I roll out the ball and the kids just start playing on their own, like that's actually way better at that age. That's almost way better than me like being like, all right, we're going to do it like this. And, because there's way more laughing and them having fun if it's just kind of them and they're all playing like, and it changes a little bit as you get older. But I totally agree. Like it is interesting. Again, it's like the shows that people love are like, the high end speed and power, which is great. I love that stuff too. I will listen to that all day. I'll probably, I'm going to check out Victor Staniev's, training log, and I will go over that. And I love scheming all that stuff up. But like, if you don't look at like that soil, like I liken it to the soil a lot, like the nutrients that's in the soil and the way that, the kind of nature recycles itself.
Very biblical, very New Testament.
Yeah.
Very nicely done. Yeah.
Yeah. If we don't do that, we have to look at that. It's really critical because otherwise you're just looking at the plant's already grown. You're just trying to prop it up and make it real nice, after.
Yeah. I joke with my British, I teach at St. Mary's over in Twickenham, and I always joke with my British students. I was driving one day, I was getting driven from the airport to the school, and there was this team practicing, and every single person was in matching perfect Adidas tops and bottoms. And there was 20 little girls and a coach holding the soccer ball around his arm like this. And I probably was I was at a stoplight. So I don't know how long this went on, but at least 2 minutes of the coach talking to the team. And I thought to myself, and I told my students, is this a model of coaching I don't know, where everyone wears the same uniform and nobody does a damn thing? And the thing is, the truth, I mean, just toss out the ball, let them play, and adjust as you can. So today is only kick with your left foot day, and tomorrow is, I don't know, make up new rules, have fun, shrink the field, widen the field, enjoy. Yeah.
Quickly, I wanted to let you know about the chance to try out Performance Herbalism for only a few dollars shipping costs and get one of Lost Empire Herb's flagship products, Pine Pollen, for free. Switching to an herbal emphasis in my supplementation has been a life-changing switch for me. Just as nature is by design balanced and sustainable, I believe that the more natural our diet and our supplementation is, the better. I love and use several Lost Empire Herbs products that boost not only my energy, but also my strength. These include Shilajit resin and the Phoenix formula. You could check those out by heading to lostempireherbs.com/justfly and grab 15% off. If you're on the fence about the power of herbalism, I have a great offer for you, which is that you can get free. You do pay a few dollars shipping, but you can get free pine pollen. Pine pollen is an herbal powerhouse that is a hormonal and energy booster packed with nutrition. It's actually part of the Phoenix formula, and you can get that for free along with the normal shipping fee at justflypinepollen.com. All right, let's get back to the show. Yeah, it's just such a creative, because the kids, they need so much variability, and like that's where the creativity can run wild. Like, it's this day today. I got this idea. It's this day today. Like that, I feel like is the ground where that stuff, I mean, it's great everywhere, but that's where it's almost like the best, because it's just like imagination. Kids need that. They can run with it.
Yeah.
You mentioned, I'm curious to pick your brain on this just really briefly before I get into a little bit of that, I guess you call it sets and rep stuff or periodization type stuff. But, you did mention, you do have a place for drills. And so I'm curious, like, what is the proportion like of a practice look like if I'm doing a discus or chop put practice? Like, how does that break down for you?
It could be 100%. I mean, it could be, it could be like, for example, if your season ends on June 1st and we go someplace like in July, a camp situation or something, I might take you, Joel, and you might have a day where are you right-handed?
Yeah, I throw right-handed.
Okay. So I might have an entire day where I make you throw left-handed. It rewires everything. And by the way, it simplifies it. And then maybe in the afternoon, we'll add an extra turn to that left-handed full turn. Maybe we break it up into 7 different drills that build upon each other. And we go station to station to station to station to station. But in a typical setting, here's how I would do it in the weight room. And it maybe be a little easier for me to explain. Okay. So push, pull, hinge, squat, loaded carry. Then I have so first step is the isometrics. I'm still a believer that no movement is the easiest way to teach movement. So maybe a glute, if instead of teaching the hinge can be difficult with load, but teaching the glute bridge is pretty easy. You got that. Push up, teaching planks is pretty easy versus say teaching the bench press. But if they can't plank, and we ain't gonna let them bench. The next step over would be the traditional grinding, slower movements, the press, the pull-up row, rack deadlift, front squat, that kind of thing. Then the next would be kind of the more, I'm looking for gaps usually here, but the one-handed stuff where you're challenging symmetry, okay? And then we go to ballistic. Now, if we're doing a ballistic movement and I see that so now we've moved up to ballistic. So I'm teaching you the snatch, okay? So you've been with me for a while. Your squat is good. Your hinge is good. You have the mobility and flexibility to learn the Olympic snatch, okay? Which I think is what you're supposed to do. And I'm watching you and it's like, oh, well, hang on. He's one arm is getting it, the other one isn't. We would step back and either go, now the nice thing about we can go lighter, which is one, we can do a compound movement, what I call complexes, where you, like, for example, in this case would be Romanian deadlift, followed by hang snatch, followed by overhead squat, followed by back squat. And the reason is by making it more complex, very often it simplifies for the athlete. Do you ever find that to be true? Making something more complex, simple, having you throw left-handed makes right-hand throwing much simpler.
Yeah, Bobby White, basketball skills coach, was talking about making drills at higher velocity, like shooting at higher velocity, actually cleaning things up. So maybe it's kind of similar.
Well, in the same happens in music and typing. Having to type faster, my type teacher made us type as many words as you could in a minute, and you didn't worry. So, and then you would count the errors, but the most important thing was the words. And you go as fast as you can. Of course, when you're a little bit more careful, you're more careful at 72 words a minute, Another time, maybe we have to break it down, slide all the way back to remind what a hinge is, do a hinge with a medicine ball, and then we do a hinge with a plate, and then we do a hinge with the barbell, then we do a hinge with the barbell in the snatch position, and then we go back to the lift. So those are the different ways you can do it. So you can make it more complex, or you can regress back and build it back up. I think those are the two best kinds personally. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting to think, sometimes you can almost have too much on your brain. Cause you could go both ways. Right. And I think about if I'm going to regress, it's because there's there's something that's not there. Like there's something, and it's almost from like a hardware perspective. Like if you can't hinge, are you not opening, the back of your pelvis very well? Or you just haven't learned to manipulate your joints that way. But so if you do it fast, it's just going to look even worse. But are there opportunities where, how do I know then maybe a skill, I have everything I need, like shooting, I have everything I need to shoot. The hardware's there, and now it's more of a software thing. So let's go ahead and rip the velocity. Maybe that's the way of thinking about it. I don't know. It's kind of
that's good. I think part of coaching is having that, I was going to say the inner eye, but kind of the confidence to go, okay, let's try this. And I tell my athletes all the time, I tell them, I could be wrong on this. This may be, and I actually will do a drill sometimes, and I'll look at the athlete and say, we will never, ever, ever do that again. That is the stupidest thing I've ever done as a coach. And then what I like to do is just build it up. I am embarrassed for all my years of coaching. If I could start again as a coach, I would not start because of that moment. And then, of course, the next day we come back to the exact same drill. Thought we were going to do this drill again. It's a good drill. I didn't. All right, I'll lie and say I didn't sleep last night thinking how to improve this drill.
Yeah, I had a dream, and it actually is not that bad of a drill. Sleeping at it's okay.
And then it takes about a year or so for them to figure out I'm lying constantly to them, and that's always kind of a fun day.
It is funny, actually. When athletes are done with their time with you and they look back, when they kind of see your process, they see the whole process now that they're out of it. Sometimes, but
I have found that there is a kind of athlete that making things more complex seems to help them. I'm seeing, and this is interesting, I'm seeing this more and more and more. I think a lot of kids with their helicopter parents and they've been micromanaged their whole life, that you almost have to throw too much at them to get them to release the brakes.
Interesting.
So I've had to kind of change. The athletes I'm working with now do better with complexes than, say, my group would have. For my group, if my snatch was hurting, Dick Notmeyer would have me do snatch deadlifts with more load. That wouldn't necessarily work for the couple of the athletes I'm thinking about right now. We would do snatch complex to help them just to get more. If they continue to just keep overthinking, everything's just going to break. You just have to go with the flow.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's athletes who tend to overanalyze. You're almost giving them enough complexity that turns off their monkey brain.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. I don't know if you've ever, I had a near coming home from this thing last weekend. I had a rental and this car cut me off and I was shocked. A car I'd never driven before, how quick my reactions were to avoid a collision. I braked, I turned, I did all the things you're supposed to do. I regrouped. I didn't honk because I couldn't let go of the wheel. But when things are that's what I want my athletes to be able to do I don't want to be telling them, you see this a lot in high schools now. There's one school I'm thinking of specifically on American football. The offense will line up in this spread formation, and then I'll yell out, Joel, watch out for number 24. And you'll still, Joel, look over the sideline, process what the coach just said. And then, of course, by the time their head swivels back, number 24 is in the end zone doing a touchdown dance because I like to get my athletes to be able to do everything kind of autonomously, not me telling them what to do, and automatically, so that, it's I see this, I do that. And to know, and you can do that as a sports team with rules. I think with defensive backs, if you're a corner, an outside defensive back, the rule is one can hurt me. You count the receivers from the widest and you count in some. One can hurt me, two can kill me. So if one goes in, shift your eyes to two, because if he's coming at you, that's an easy touchdown. One might catch a pass, that hurts. Two will kill us. So those are rules. And I think sometimes good rules if you can teach the rules and keep coming back to them, this is what we're all trying to do. And then the other thing is practice special situations constantly. The one thing I do like, there's a show called The Man in the Arena about Tom Brady. And I think it's the third episode where they've just won the third in 4 years. And Belichick that season focused on special situations, every practice, every game. And Tom talks about, we were prepared for situations. And so to me, so you have rules, you have special situations, and then you get out there and you play. And I think now as track coaches, I don't know if you ever coached the hurdles, but I think you need rules. My brother Rich was a very famous California hurdles coach. And when I asked him advice about helping with the hurdles, he said, well, there's 10 hurdles. And he said, it's the 10th that makes you win and lose. And so one of the things he got me to do is when I coach the hurdles is that we never do that stupid thing, every hurdle practice. They go out of the starting blocks and they go over hurdle 1, hurdle 2, hurdle 3, hurdle 1, hurdle 2, hurdle 3. That's not the race. It should be hurdle 1, hurdle 2, hurdle 3, and then just put a piece of tape on the ground for hurdles 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then put a hurdle at 10 and have them run all 10. Not all, they're hurdling 1, 2, and 3, and people will trip over a piece of Scotch tape on hurdles 4 and 5, the same place they trip at every track meet. And to me, that's when you get wise coaching, is when you're training, your drills and training, your vision and training reflects the real issues that happen in performance. And performance is when someone calls your name and you step up.
Yeah, it was just referred to as the Ralph Oman show that just went out as gaposis, like the gap between training and competition. Like what happens in competition and what does your training look like? And then if there's too big of a gap there, that gaposis, then you're in trouble. So
gaposis. Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah. So if you have hurdlers who go hurdle 1, hurdle 2, hurdle 3, and I'm coaching against you, I'm going to tell my hurdlers, I want you to win 4, 5, and 6. You're going to be, I'm actually maybe having practice being behind, even having maybe people, a good way to train hurdlers is have them get hit. Those foam things that you
pool noodles.
Pool noodles. Yeah, because you get, remember at the hurdles you get hit.
Oh yeah, well yeah, if someone's to your like left and their trail arm is smacking you the whole time. Yeah, been there.
Yeah, so you go hurdle 1, hurdle 2, hurdle 3. I hit you with the pool noodle at 3, and your job is to go 4, 5, 6, just to get used to that kind of thing. And tell your hurdlers you're going to be behind at hurdles 1, 2, and 3. You're going to win at 4, 5, 6, and 10. Or that's how I like to prep my athletes. What's going to happen at the meet? There's a great word from theology. Prophets are not foretellers. They do not predict the future. Prophets are forthtellers. They say, if you continue this behavior, these are the kinds of things that are going to happen to you. And I think good coaching is forthtelling. So here is a way we can win this race. You're not as fast as Joel. You're not. You're not as good looking as Joel. Okay. Sorry. True story. But Joel trains hurdles 1, 2, and 3. He's got a great start. He hits hurdle 4 all the time, and he clips hurdle 5. He stumbles on 7. We're going to jump him on 4, 5, 6, 7 and win the race. If he sees you pass, he'll panic and he'll crash on 10. And all of a sudden people go, how'd you know that? Well, because that's what coaches do. Your team is more talented than my team. I got to figure out ways to attempt to win. If you got LeBron James in high school on your team, I'm going to have to do some pretty good coaching to beat your team that day.
Yeah, it's funny. You're actually almost scarily accurate with me and the hurdles, because I ran my senior year of high school. Like I should have ran them all through high school. I don't know why I didn't, but for some reason, senior year, I'm like, I'll run them this year. Why not? And I remember I pretty much just practiced the first 3 or 4. I don't think I ever ran more than that for a practice. I mean, my coach wasn't really even coaching me. It's just like, I don't know, here's some hurdles. And I remember a video of me. I did make it to the regional meet, not past that, but I remember a video from the regional meet. Like I'm winning by hurdle 3 or 4. Like I'm ahead of everybody. And then what do you know? Just like people just start mowing me down. And part of that is too, the better your hurdling technique, you do get better as the race goes on. I was just going off of just like basketball athleticism, basically just quickness and just like almost like I'm hurdling people. Like but then by the time I got there, and I just never practiced it. And it's funny because I've heard like very accomplished track coaches say, and this at least formed my bias back when I was coaching hurdles, Wilmington College. I checked this. I was like, all right, this sounds about right. And it's like, oh, we worked for like months on just hurdle 1 and to make sure we're all in on the technique on 1 hurdle. And I'm like, at the time I was like, okay. And then, the longer I kind of went on, even the last couple of years, I'm like, I don't think I agree with that anymore. Because it's like, are you just going to practice? It's like variable learning too. It's like nothing's going to be perfect. And each hurdle is an opportunity to learn. So it's like by only doing 1 hurdle, I'm actually minimizing my ability to learn, especially if I do a good job of putting the things in the athlete's head to notice, like, oh, just notice this, what's happening, or maybe messing with the hurdles. They're a little bit different. That's actually, that's one of the things that I'm not coaching hurdles in person now. I work with a few people online, but like, if I was in person coaching high school hurdles right now, I would have the best time just messing with those hurdle marks just a little bit, doing variable learning stuff. I would have, hopefully no one falls, but that actually, because I was going to ask you this. I get asked this about once a year because the Rewzon study that you mentioned in Easy Strength, and I think it came out of the Thomas Kerr's text from the 80s or 90s. It's like the study where like there's the long jumpers, and you have the long jumpers who just went max. It was in the motor learning section of Easy Strength talking about schema theory. And it's like there's long jumpers who every jump was as far as they could. And then there was the jumpers that, I don't know, they put like hoops in the pit or marks in the pit, and they just had, it was a game kind of like how,
range, we call it range throwing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I don't know, like I that's the Rewzon book's all where I found that study, but I'm curious how that's gone to your throws practice. Yeah. Like you said, range throwing, right?
That's the bulk of it. I mean, most of the and it's funny because when Boris Zajac, the first person to throw over 80 after the wall fell, he went up to Canada to coach. And the system he used is interesting. You warm up, you take 6 hard throws, and then in the hammer, you mark off 15 meters from your hardest throw. And by the way, you mark off 15. And while I'm putting the hula hoop out there, or the garbage can, or the chalk, whatever, You might be over there doing a couple of quick sets of snatches or something. And then we would get this mark. I like mentally go about 80%. Okay. And what you try to do is put it inside the garbage can or the hoop. Now, if you throw too far, you fail. And if you throw too short, I just say, well, you got to hit that garbage can or whatever. John Powell, the great discus thrower, loves this. So do I. I think some of the best successes I've had of breaking an athlete out of a slump is range throwing. Because what it does is it makes the brain, it comes down to this. And this is John. I'll use John's example first. And then, so you finally throw 200 feet. You've been training for 7 years. You throw 200 feet. You've done everything you can to get to 200. Well, how are you going to get to 201? Well, you're going to deadlift your way up to 201. His idea is, no, don't do that. Put a mark at 160 and see how easy you can throw 160. Well, when you're throwing 160 is nothing. But what's weird is you throw 170. I say, no. I said 160. So finally, we get you to slow down to get the rhythm for a 160 throw. And it feels, that's 80%, folks. And it feels so ridiculously effortlessly. And I'll walk over and I go, so 80% of your throw is completely effortless. And you'll say, yeah. And I go, well, what is the hardest thing you do? Add to it. And then you look at me, it's not much. So what we then try to do is keep that same feeling of effortless, but pretty soon that same feeling gets you to 170. And what we think is that if your 170 is your 80, well, you've pushed your 200% up. It works the opposite too with body composition, fat loss. It could be a weight on a scale. If I was to stand on the scale today and weigh even 230, but let's just say 240, that is unacceptable. That's age 65. I can't weigh 240. I want to dance at my granddaughter's wedding. That's unacceptable. I will probably fast and walk all day long and just be an idiot until I get down to a number that I find agreeable. Most people understand that as some line in the sand. But what I like is as track and field and weightlifting, we can use it this way coming up. They're one of the reasons most good throwers don't do master track is I'm not going to throw 140. I'm sorry. I can't stomach that. It is against everything I believe. Okay. Well, that is my floor. In weightlifting, the floor is in body composition, the floor is the ceiling, so to speak.
I got you.
I'm fine with weighing 218. I'm fine with 211. 240, that's, or if my child says to me, I don't like to go to the pool with you because you're so fat. It can be something like that inspires someone to make that mental, that quick, I got to change stuff. For me, I think what's brilliant about that study is that those of us who work in other fields understand the same thing too. I think a mistake a lot of businesses make, for example, is that we just had our best month. So let's next month make more. And if I'm coming in as a business consultant, I say, no, that's stupid. What I would do, what are traditionally your worst months? Well, October and April, we're just making it up. Okay. Well, this year, let's have the best October we ever had. So October is always about, 73% of our December sales. Let's get up. Let's just do a little bit better. And you see what I'm doing? I'm nudging up. So I'm a big believer in the nudge. And the funny thing is, I think that's the way the human brain likes it too. I think the human brain likes to nudge things. Just to say, having me type as fast as I can, or have me shoot faster in a drill. And by the way, I do the same thing with discus throwing. We use power balls. They're called machine gun drills, where I have you do. It takes a couple of us, but I have you do the same drill, and I keep handing you the ball. And you just keep throwing.
That sounds like fun.
And some athletes hate it because they want correction after every throw. But I'm like, shut up, just keep going. And nice. What happens is the rhythm and the speed, all of a sudden everything just cleans it up. And all of a sudden the thrower just looks so much smoother. So complexity seems to help the brain in some ways. Drills seem to help the brain in some ways. And then playing with percentages seems to help the brain in some ways. As a strength coach, playing with percentages is natural because the load on the bar is so easy to work with. more reps, less reps is so easy. I mean, I do it I don't even think about it. I just don't even think about it. It's just so built into double progression that you don't even, honestly, it's kind of funny for me to say this. I don't think about double progression. Progression is increasing load, increasing complexity. So go from a plank to an Olympic lift, that's a huge jump in complexity. Going from a 50-pound lift to a 400-pound lift is a huge jump in load. The other double is reps. I think more reps with more weight is what I'm always trying to get you to do. I expect you to be able to bench 400 as a thrower. If in your off season you bench 400 for 15 reps, we're not going to have to bench anymore this year. Okay, you follow. I mean, the bench is done for the season. We're good. Even though every time I walk out of the room, you'll bench. So that's, I think, how the human brain works. And I think that's how we get better at coaching, is by having that toolkit. This thing about playing with percents, see, it does get back to your hurdling example. I would like to put a piece of, well, you can even use those, those little agility hurdles. It's like,
oh yeah, sure. Like mini hurdles, wickets, like the little 8-inch ones or whatever that are orange.
Yeah. What I would do now for a young hurdler, young Joel here, little Joel, brand new, I might have the mini hurdles at 1, 2, all the way up to 9, and then have the competition hurdle at 10, and maybe maybe time you on day 1, and then maybe on day 7 or 8, 9, do the same thing except have a competition hurdle at 5 and 10, and just and then kind of swell our way back to our first competition. To me, that would combine the complexity with the ranginess of that, that targeted jumping.
Yeah.
I think that would be one of those things. When you find a good drill or idea, you almost instantly see how it connects the dots between all the other things you're trying to do.
Yes. And like back to the soil, as you were talking, like be easy strength, the business example, fat loss. The way I think of it too is almost like, okay, if you have a plant in the soil, nurturing the 80% upward it's like nurturing the plant. It's like making sure it's watered. It's making sure the soil's of good quality, gets sunlight, you're taking care of it. Versus I think going like 95% every day is like trying to take that plant. You're just trying to pull it up, and it doesn't work.
I like that. Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah. Cause I garden. Yeah, my garden's right over there. And one of the things that's so delightful about gardening is that the work you put into it really is just getting rid of the weeds. That's most of it. I mean, in a couple of days, I'll be, I do the 3 sisters. That's corn, black beans, and squash. And they work together. They work in their own little symbiotic community. It's kind of cool. And once I stick those, I'll have math, not my strength, 12. I'll have 12 corns. Once I put that corn into the ground, I think it's 8 inches or something like that, I'm kind of done. I don't have to tell the corn every day, okay, time to go to sea. Okay, it's time for you guys to go to sea. It'll figure it out. It'll figure it out by its own, And I like your example. And if I do try to rush it, here in Utah, it's called, you got to be careful of hot soil. If you buy too hot of planting soil, because of the intense heat we get in here in the summer, you'll burn all your crops up because you tried too hard. And if you fertilize too much, you kill everything. Yep. You kill, the weeds. Weeds love fertilizer. Weeds love care. Okay. Just so you know, but you're right. If you try too hard, if I water every day and I add fertilizer, I kill my crops.
Yeah.
If I even do a little bit less than I should, they'll be fine. And of course, homothesis, whatever you want to call it, is where you want to be.
Yeah. I'm just going back to like that machine gun drill. I've never heard about that before, but it makes so much sense. It reminds me a little bit. Jeremy Fisher, jumps coach at the Olympic Training Center, was on a long time ago, back the first 20 episodes, and he has this thing called the 2-minute drill for jumping. And it kind of it's funny because the other jump coaches might be like, oh, that's not specific or whatever. It's basically like, all right, I'm going to high jump and I have 2 minutes and I have like a 5-step approach and I have to jump over that bar as many times as I can in 2 minutes, And it's like, yeah, is it endurance? Yeah, sure. It's endurance, but it's also like takes the over analytical part out of your head, and it's
brain erasure.
Yeah.
That the Brits had a really good long jumper at not this Olympics, the one before, who did the hang technique. And everyone said, why do you do the hang technique? He said, that's the only technique I can trust under the pressures of high level competition. And I thought that was amazing. The fact that he was so honest about it, that's not something you often see. But it's your same point. Why not have these training things where we just jump? Jumpers jump, throwers throw, sprinters sprint, hurdlers hurdle. And when you get away from that, you get away from what they're trying to do. Oh, I like that drill. Yeah. And I would even put even more confines on it. I mean, put a hula hoop in the middle.
Yeah.
I know you can jump 28 feet. I want you to jump on a drill, 16 feet,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I used to do a high jump drill too with like the velocity. It's like I had a coach who was so good at steering me the way I needed to go because he knew I thought too much. And he also knew that I read everything and was one of those people like a young know-it-all. And he would be like, oh, well, I heard this Russian coach I talked to said that this is a good idea. And it's like he knew I was going to go try it. But basically one of the things was like high jump, long jump, like you're high jumping with a low bar, but as far as you can over it, higher velocity, it's like, so now you're speeding it up. And that was one of the best things. I love doing that.
What a good drill.
Yeah. Yeah. High jump, long jump, I called it. It was great.
So when I teach gymnastics, I teach wrestling and football players gymnastics because I think it's great for the shoulders. And I don't teach round-offs. I never would use the term round-offs with a football player. We say somersaults for distance. And they come and they try to go as far as, of course, the way the physics work is your feet land right where your hands were, and that becomes the round-off. It's interesting. Your coach used this. This is quite good. That's really, did you ever do the long jump for height?
No, I never flipped it. Well, I didn't. I did high jump and triple jump, so not long jump so much. But that would have been interesting as well.
So there was a coach in the early '60s who really had a magnificent track team, went all in on isometrics, and his belief was isometrics, a magic drill, and the event, and that's how he coaches athletes. You got strong by going, and then the magic drill for the long jump was long jumping for height. And I found that, and it's funny you said that, because when you said that, it was like, my mind is now back in that article, probably Scholastic Coach from 1962 or 3, probably.
Yeah.
Or Athletics Journal.
If I was working with like an educational course for young coaches, I'm at a college, and I got my curriculum. I feel like that, like just a course on, all right, you got 3 things. Here's your actual event. Here's your basic isometric strength, and come up with the magic drill, and just like come up with like 30 different versions of that, just to get used to like just coming up with these types of ideas. I think what you just said there is profound. And I would like to say I base a lot of my coaching on what you just said. My mind works well in 3s, but I think you're right. I think I have this thing. I don't know if I call it the prisoner's dilemma. If for whatever reason you're only allowed 3 15-minute bouts a week to train for your goal, your sport, what would you do? Well, if you tell me warm up on the treadmill, I have to slap you across the face. If you say yoga, I still have to slap you across the face. You got 3 15-minute windows. What do you do? So when I was the head coach, one of the assignments I gave all the assistant coaches was, if the athlete only has 45 minutes a week to train, what are you going to have them do? My thought process on that is, in high school, most of your athletes not only compete, at least schools I've been at, in multiple sports, but they also do multiple things on the track team. So I was a hurdler and a discus thrower. So I would like to have had, so if I say I would have also thrown the shot in an hour-long practice, I would do this magic hurdle drill. I would do the magic discus drill and the magic shot put drill. And then I'd get as many other bouts as I could. Yeah, I like this. And by the way, what I usually ask people, what are the 3 keys? The follow-up to the prisoner's dilemma is the 3 keys.
but it always has to happen after the prisoner's dilemma, because the person has to wash through all the nonsense that goes through their head.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I feel like for some people, the magic drill could be that singular event. For some people, it could be like the 2-minute drill or the machine gun drill, probably depends on what they, but just that you call it the magic drill, like to have that, like, that bind, you're creating something out of it too. I think there's something powerful.
And what's weird is that very often you can find, like in the discus, it would probably be either the overhead squat or the power, the squat snatch, power snatch into the overhead squat or the overhead squat. That's your weight training. Power balls, full turns into a wall, so they don't go very far. Okay, those are the two big ones. Those are the snatch and the full turn discus throw. Well, what comes after that, which knits everything together? And there are times in my career I'd say, well, the suitcase carry for that, that side strength. But then the next month it'll be I'm working with some other athletes and I'm like, oh no, they need to do the machine gun drill or whatever the damn thing is, or the high jump for distance or whatever. So yeah, and I like it. I like the academic. I like sitting down 6 months before we meet as a team and agreeing that this is what we're going to do with Joel, who wants to do the triple jump, the high jump, and be on the 4x1 team. So we know when you come to practice, mostly you're going to do a lot of this, and then of course get you into the competitive field. It's a lesson I learned as a track coach. You can disagree, you'd be wrong, but go ahead. The best conditioning most high school kids get is track meets.
Yeah,
and that's why I wish we'd bring dual meets back. I think dual meets can save track and field.
Yeah.
My high school go against your high school. There's in the 100 meters, there's 3 sprinters, not 48, because those are the 3 varsity sprinters. And if I get a point in the shot put, I help my team. So I'm going to throw the shot put. What was the high school you went to?
Milwaukee Heritage Christian High School. That was a long time ago.
So to defeat the hated Milwaukee Christian Heritage High School, and your mascot was?
The Patriots.
Of course they were. The Patriots. To defeat the Patriots, I would train that week in the shot put to get the 1 point that coach asked me to see if that would help us tilt the thing. Yeah. And then every parent in the stand knows that when Milwaukee has 82 points and my school has 81, Milwaukee won today.
Yeah.
And when they see the kids who finishes first, second, and third, they understand that, versus way track meets are now. How did you do? I have no idea. Yeah. Well, what place did you take? I don't know. I think I took first, but there was a guy who threw at 10 o'clock this morning in flight number 24 that might.
Yeah. The way the competition, making it competitive and realistic, like just like not far off of a basketball or football game, I mean, I think there's something powerful there.
I think you need to measure the heights and the distances in the field events, but I think you could do a really good dual meet with just taking pictures of the finish line. You don't need times. Yeah. And you know what? Your athletes would run their hearts out. My point is I think you get your athletes in condition by track. You're running athletes by running in meets.
Yeah. Because
most of your athletes don't run nearly fast enough in practice. It's when someone goes, is when you pick up speed.
Yeah. Yeah. I know, even like back to the over analytical thing. Like I know for me personally too, like just like I had to race people in like acceleration circuits. Like everyone's starting the push up position, ready, set, go, race your buddies.
Oh,
like,
yeah. Love that.
Or do 3 mountain climber kicks or donkey kicks and go that was so much better for me than just like get on the line and think about something like infinitely. Like if we're talking about turn off someone who overthinks brain, like that variable learning was so good for me in that realm. I was going to say with the hurdles too, it's like almost like the rhythm, like you said, the tape marks. It's like the soil is also like the rhythm, like the rhythmic qualities that exist, and then put a little complex piece in there. And I like that. So last question, and this actually probably reflects like almost what I came in with the theme of, but there's so many great things we talked about. It's all good. I even if I had less time to talk about periodization, totally fine. But I asked this to you because some people have asked me, like for Q&As I put out there, like, where do you get started with sets and reps and periodization? And I think sometimes I get so buried in complexity to go back to like, well, where do you start at the base level without getting too carried away, right? Like, well, you could just do 2 sets of 5 every day, right? Like, why not?
That's easy strength. Yeah.
Why not just do that? Way. Like, what do you think about that? Like, where do you start?
No
a young
problem.
coach?
So first off, I think, and I said this, you have to have rules. Okay. So I say the exercises are push, pull, hinge, squat, loaded, carry. Rule number one, your push, your pull, and your squat numbers need at the end of the week to be the exact same. Maybe not load, but if you add up all your push numbers in a typical high school setting, you'll probably have over 200 pushes. I doubt you get into, well, you might get into the high 70s in pulls, and you'll have 25 squats. But what I said is those numbers have to be the same. So I like 75, 75, 75, which is this 5 sets of 5, 3 days a week. So by having the rule that the push, the pull, and the squat have to be the same number, you instantly in 2 weeks, you clean up most of the problems with sets and reps by having a rule. And, I talk about this all the time. I'm going to give you a perfect program. For 2 weeks, 5 sets of 5, military press, row, front squat. After that, 2 weeks, 5 sets of 5, bench press, pull up, back squat. There, perfect program for high school. You'll get your hypertrophy work, you'll get your power work. Now, hinges are a different family because, deadlifts, you're going to have less, snatch and clean and jerk, you're going to have more, kettlebell swings, you're going to have a lot more. But you should hinge. You should probably hinge every workout, and you should hinge, not do those ugly things I see. And then loaded carries, yes, do some. Okay, there's your perfect program. Basically depends on two things, what you want. In a strength program, you probably have 10 quality reps. But in the high school level, it's not going to be a big deal because they're not going to be strong enough to get that yet. But 10 reps, that's 5 sets of 2, 3 sets of 3. That's easy strength, okay? For most cases, it's the Lorm's numbers from World War II. Basically 15 to 30 reps per workout in most movements. So now let's go back to my template. If you did 3 sets of 8 in the military, 3 sets of 8 in the row, 3 sets of 8 in the front squat, 3 sets of 8 in the snatch grip deadlift, and then you did the farmer walks, that's a pretty good program. Okay, do that for 2 weeks, then go heavier and do 3 sets of 5. Do that for a few more days, and then go weeks, then go 3 sets of 3. Flip the switch, go to bench press, pull up, thick bar deadlift, back squat, loaded carry variations, do whatever's appropriate, 3 sets of 8, 5 sets of 5, whatever gets you there. And just keep making those small dosing changes. And to me, that's far better than all the nonsense I see. I just told you it's better than most programs you'll ever read entirely.
Dan, one thing you said, I forget if it was on the last podcast or one before it, but you talked about something like in discus, until you're throwing like 180 or 190 or something like that, don't worry about periodization. Like something like that. I don't remember the exact distance, but I'm curious, thoughts on, all right, we're going to do a strength phase or a power phase or whatever. What do you think there?
I mean, I've competed against schools that actually have periodization, and then you go to the meet and the kids are doing standing throws. Yeah, they might be more prepared at their mitochondrial level than my throwers. Their little furnaces of power are in better shape than my throwers, but my throwers just doubled their efforts. Literally, I had an athlete one time throw twice as far as his competition. Folks, that's brutal to watch, okay? That's brutal to watch. Twice as far? Brutal. And the kids from the other school, they all had their, strength numbers on their T-shirts. And it's like, yeah, you guys are strong, but you don't do full turns. So my thought is, I guarantee most of the time when see people trying to apply these advanced programs, they still haven't taken care of the fundamentals and basics. I'm talking, so my athlete has to compete 8 a.m. on Friday, this Friday. And so I had a very candid conversation with him about bowel movements. If you have to throw at the state meet at 8 a.m. and you're used to having your morning poopy at 7:30, well, you're out there already. You're waiting on your flight to start. You're warming up. And I swear I've stolen more state track championships because I talk about things like bowel movements and what time to get to the meet, don't get there 5 minutes before, don't get there 5 hours before. So some of those fundamentals, the details, I tell my athletes all the time, the night before the nationals, the state meet, you're not going to sleep well. That's just the way it is. You might have traveled and you're going to be in a different bed. You're probably only half as much sleep. So when you finally do get up in the morning, acknowledge, I knew I wasn't going to have a good night's sleep, but I've just finished, 362 straight days of good sleep. I'm fine for one day. And if you don't have your magic breakfast that you always have, whatever it is, your snack pack and mommy makes you whatever, that's fine too, because so to me, those are the details that are far more important than whether you're in a power phase or whatever.
Yeah, it strikes me as that being like, you talk about majoring in the minors, and it's like,
yes.
And I feel like, this is something that I think until maybe on some level you've coached like the sport and not just done the strength, but you've done the sport, is you realize that like throwing is powerful, throwing is explosive, sprinting is explosive. If I do a good job managing the explosive like sport that the person's doing, as long as the strength program is consistent and not stupid, the strength is going to take care of itself. Like a strong athlete is going to do the basic things and do their sport.
Have you ever seen Charlie Francis's strength workout?
Oh, super basic. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Lat pull, bench press, and leg press, because he didn't like changing exercises because it made his sprinters sore. Well, and now you can disagree with it. I've got that German book with all the one-legged snatches and stuff. I look at that and it's like, your brain would have to use so much energy to figure out the technique of the one-legged step up on the box, snatch, or clean. And by the way, it looks impressive, but is that really going to make you jump farther or throw farther? When you talk to the best and brightest, that's one nice thing about having a friend like Tom Fahey in my pocket. Tom Fahey talks to everybody, and he would tell me, yeah, Dan, nobody at the elite level does that. This is what they're doing, in real time. And I'd be like, oh. And like he told me when Easy Strength came out, he goes, yeah, that's exactly what the best are doing. They pick a couple exercises and they get freakishly strong, and that's it.
Yeah.
Sadly, I didn't listen to that. I took that. I took the squat is the answer to all questions things too strongly, and it talked the throwers. Very, very few throwers get anything out of squats. Now, the movement of squatting should be done daily. It's a fundamental human movement. There's great value to it. I don't see a lot of value getting your squat up at the high school level, probably in the mid 200s, at the open level, over 400. Those are light loads, but your hinge, your snatch, and your deadlift and your clean should be, pretty scary to people. And so you're doing this program where you got your athletes squatting 4 days a week, doing the Soviet secret squat sauce program. And you later find out that the Soviets never did that ever. Someone just put that on paper. And your athletes can't walk up a flight of stairs because their legs are so tired and their joints hurt so much from those heavy squats. I'm not against squats, folks, but it has to be done in their place. I'm not against really too many things, but the problem is in our field, if one sugar cube is good, then 50 pounds must be better.
Yeah, it's like putting too much fertilizer in the soil, I guess. It's like you got to pick
back
how
to
much.
Our fertilizer story. Yeah,
you got to pick how much. And it's funny, when I was in college, I remember my college track coach, who was I went to a small college. Like, it wasn't like I didn't have a specialized strength coach. It was just the track coach giving me a strength program, and it was the same exercises all year. And I didn't complain about it at the time. Like, and afterwards, I was like, man, we did the same ones all year. Maybe I would have been so much better if we would have mixed up. And now I'm like, no, I wouldn't have. Like, that was good that we just did the same ones. We did snatch, we did clean, squatted, like that, pretty much that. I did step ups a little bit for high jump, like just regular old box step ups and a few other things here and there.
My
but
senior
really
year
changed.
at Utah State, I was so sick of lifting. So I started lifting in 65. So this was 79. And I had recovered from that big concussion from getting hit by the discus. And all I did my senior year was squat, snatch, and power clean. And I was basically adding about a meter or two a week in my discus. And people kept saying, what is it? And I look back now, and it's the first time in my life, we always describe, competitions pulling a rubber band. I was famous for pull the rubber band and then pull it more, and then pull it more, and then pull it even more, and then pull it, and then have somebody help me pull it. My senior year, I finally just went and let it go. And my body snapped and recovered. And I have always kept that in my pocket as a program. And then in 1988, I met Glenn Passy, the great national champion from Utah State in the discus. He threw 190, weighing 178 pounds with 2K. So guy was a stud. And I asked about his training program. He goes, I just clean and pressed up the body weight, and then I snatched up the body weight. And I just stood there and wept softly because he had figured out his own little, and it's interesting. Well, there's more stories there, but I don't want to, we'll come back to those at another time.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically he stopped. He's like, I did it. I'm good now. Like, now I'll just throw, or like basically take that.
Yeah, now I'll just go be the national champion. Thank you very much. I'll be here if you need me,
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's sometimes when you figure out those things, most great athletes, don't talk to them 6 months after they retired. Then they're full of it. But about 5 years after they've retired and they've let things sift, and you sit down with them, very often it'll be like, yeah. And then they'll come out gems, and almost universally it'll be so basic, so fundamental, so simple that both of you will laugh out loud. Be like, yeah. Coach Mon told me when I asked him what was the secret to throwing the discus far, he said, lift weights 3 days a week, throw 4 for the next 8 years.
Yeah. It's 8 years that gets you. Right.
But it's 8 years that gets you.
Yeah.
And if I go back in time, I probably would power clean and press, squat, snatch, and probably just power clean and walk out the door and do none of the stuff I did, other stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. It is interesting when you're in the middle of it, and it's what they say, reading the label. It's hard to read the label when you're inside the bottle, at the time. It's like, if I just do this and this extra power thing, that'll be it. And
but you got to remember, Joel, how much pushback guys like me get. If you're speaking at a workshop and I follow you, and you have this wonderful PowerPoint presentation with graphs and bars and floating charts that superimpose, and you show all these squiggles, and people, they'll be looking like that. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, he's so right. And then I got there and go, lift weights 3 days a week, throw 4 for the next 8 years. Be like, I hate his work. I already knew that coming in. Yeah, I know you knew it. Now go do it. Everybody knows, but very few people do. My coach, Coach Yoda, once said to me, do or don't do. There is no try. And it's true. I joke. He wasn't really my coach. Okay. But it's true. Sometimes it just comes down to you just gotta stick with the form and let it. In American football, we say you dance with the girl who brung you, and I think that's the secret. You just have to have the courage to quit, fall in love with every squirrel that comes across. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really, just thinking about really like what makes the best and what takes the patience to cultivate, and what's the thing that sometimes I think it's easy to look more so at the what than the how, because once you get in the simple, like the doing simple better, it's just, okay, well, how do I do this? Like one of the books I'm reading, Logan Christopher has been on this show, who's an amateur strongman, was posting about this. It's called The Spiritual Journey of Joseph Greenstein, I think, who's the Mighty Atom, and like his strongman beginnings. And it's like, that is all about the how, like bending iron. It's not like, all right, well, you're going to bend this kind of iron rod and then this one, and it's all these drills. It's like, no, here's the piece. And like, you have to generate the mental energy to impart the correct form onto that. It's so much the how, and it's like that, the strongman stuff helps you, I think, appreciate that more, and you apply the how to a basic program. The creativity strikes you when it needs to, and you are consistent, and it's just good stuff to think about. It's stuff I wish I would have known more when I was.
There's an old business axiom. It says, the guy who knows the how always works for the guy who knows the why.
Mm.
And and it's fine. I'm not trying to one up you. I'm just saying it's interesting to see how there's, as the cliche, the big rocks or the 30,000 foot view and all that stuff. But it is true. If you know rolling averages, when you step back, the farther and farther you step back, you begin to see the pattern so much clearer. And so many of the patterns I see in my life is that all this extra stuff I didn't really raise that distance or load up. It was more, but it wasn't better.
Yeah. As I look back, it was always the big things that were greater than the sum of what put into them. It was playing basketball. It was sprinting against people week after week after week. It was doing the same consistent lifts and slowly getting better, like across the course of the season. Like it was those things that were...
Write those 3 things down.
Yeah. Yeah. Greater than the sum
That's your next program.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I'm serious. Track practice will start with, and change the rules of the basketball game or the soccer game to, maybe there's no one's allowed to shoot inside the 3-point line, and just have 3-on-3. So everyone's running up and down the court, whatever you do, or only layups or only whatever. Just change the rules enough to make it, different so that the basketball players don't dominate, or let me play against them and I'll hit them. But yeah, I like your and then you race, and then you lift, you race, you play basketball. That's not bad.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
Yeah. Sum of the part, or greater than the sum. That's my thought, man. I love it. Oh, hey, Dan, thanks for coming on the show again.
Oh, yeah.
We talked about a lot, and it's always good when we, it's like the thing I was going to ask you was not even the whole show, but it actually turned out to be like, it's the best when we can just kind of go on something that's so important for, that front end.
And I'm a big fan of your work, and I like what you're doing. So yeah. Do me a favor, make sure you send me when you put it up, okay? So I can share it with people.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we'll do.
Email it, though, because remember, I'm 65, not 15.
Yeah. I won't Snapchat send it to you. So
Yeah, that's not going to get there.
Thanks for tuning in to another show. If you enjoy what we're doing with this, you can help us out by leaving us a rating or review on iTunes, Spotify, whatever you happen to be listening to. I totally appreciate it. We'll see you all next week.